Hello and welcome. Thank you once again for joining me on my YouTube channel. In the last video, I talked about the history of Jamaica, part 1, about the original inhabitants and how they were found by Christopher Columbus and what subsequently happened afterwards. Now, before I go on, I'd like to thank all my friends, family and subscribers for lending me their ears. And if you're seeing me for the very first time, please hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos. Now, at the end of my last video, I said that because of the internal strife within Jamaica and because the Spanish government was not paying much attention to Jamaica, it was ripe for the picking, and the English was about to pick that apple. And they picked that apple on May the 10th, 1655. Admiral William Penn and General Robert Venables led a successful attack on Jamaica. The Spanish quickly surrendered, freed their slaves and buggered off to Cuba. Now, those freed slaves and their descendants were later be known as the Maroons. Now, the Maroons are very important in Jamaican history, and we'll go on about that at a later date. They still are today. The early period of English settlement in Jamaica, the settlements grew basically because of the pirates who came from the island of Tortuga off the western part of the island of Hispaniola, which is modern day Haiti, and they were based in Port Royal. They were a wild and rough bunch, ruthless as they come. They took their gold and silver and jewels to Port Royal. Port Royal, prior to this time, was a significant town in Jamaica. Under the Buccaneers' leadership, within a decade, it grew to be known as one of the wealthiest and most wickedest city in the world. The greatest buccaneer of them all was Captain Henry Mugen. He started as a pirate, later became a privateer. Mugen mercilessly raided the Spanish fleet and colonies. He kept the Spanish busy defending their coast so that they had little time to attack Jamaica. Now, we're going to spend a little bit more time on Henry Mugen. Because Henry Mugen, you could say, at that time was the most famous Jamaican. It's still famous today because lots of people drink the rum. Is the original pirate of the Caribbean. Much of Henry's early life is unknown. He's born in South Wales, but it's not known how he made his way to the West Indies or how he began his career as a pirate. He was probably a member of a group of raiders led by Christopher Mings in the early 1600s. Mugen became a close friend of Sir Thomas Moodiford, the governor of Jamaica. When diplomatic relations between the Kingdom of England and Spain worsened in 1667, Moodiford gave Mugen a letter of marque. Now, this letter is a license to attack and seize Spanish vessels. Basically, right, he wasn't just a pirate now, he was being licensed by the English government to attack the Spanish and anywhere he could. Mugen subsequently conducted successful and highly lucrative raids on Puerto Principe, now Camagüey, in modern Cuba, Portobello in modern Panama. In 1668 he sailed for Maracaibo and Gibraltar, both on Lake Maracaibo in modern-day Venezuela. He raided and plundered both cities before destroying a large Spanish squadron as he escaped. In 1671, Mugen attacked Panama City, landing on the Caribbean coast and traversing the Isthmus before attacking the city, which was on the Pacific coast. The battle actually was a rout, although the privateers profited less than other raids. By the time they'd actually raided Panama City, the English and the Spanish had signed a peace treaty. Now, to appease the Spanish, with whom the English had signed the peace treaty, Mugen was arrested and summoned to England in 1672, but was treated as a hero by the general populace and leading figures of the government and royalty, including King Charles II. Mugen was appointed a Knight Bachelor in November 1674 and returned to Jamaica shortly afterwards to serve as a territory's lieutenant governor. He served on the Assembly of Jamaica until 1683. On 3 occasions he acted as governor of Jamaica in the absence of the post holder. A memoir published by Alexander Equemelim, a former shipmate of Mugen, accused the privateer of widespread torture and other offences. Mugen brought a libel suit against the book's English publishers and won, although the black picture Equemelim portrayed of Mugen as affected history view. The Welshman, he died in Jamaica on the 25th of August 1688. His life was romanticised after his death and became an inspiration for pirate-themed works of fiction across all genres. Of course, you could say that he is the original pirate of the Caribbean. Now, a violent earthquake destroyed Port Royal on June 7, 1692. The survivors of the earthquake, who settled in Kingston, abandoned Port Royal. Port Royal became an important naval base in the 18th century. The English settlers concerned themselves with growing crops that could easily be sold in England. Tobacco, indigo, cocoa soon gave way to sugar, which became the main crop for the island. The sugar industry grew so rapidly that the 57 estates in the island in 1673 grew to nearly 430 by 1739. Enslaved Africans filled the large labour force required for the industry. The colonists were impressed with the performance and endurance of Africans in the tropical heat, as well as the fact that they were more resistant to malaria than their European counterpart. African labour was cheaper and more promising. They continued to ship Africans to the West Indies to be sold to planters who forced them to work on sugar plantations. The slave trade became a popular and profitable venture for the colonists. In fact, the transportation of slaves became such a regular affair that the journey from Africa to the West Indies became known as the Middle Passage. The voyage so named because the journey of British slaves was a three-sided affair, starting from England with trade goods, to Africa where these were exchanged for slaves. Afterwards the journey continued to the West Indies, where the slaves were landed and sugar, rum, molasses were taken aboard for the final leg of the journey back to England. Slaves, however, were unhappy about their status, so they rebelled whenever they could, and many of them were successful in running away from the plantation and joining the hitherto named Maroons in the most inaccessible mountains. Several slave rebellions stand out in Jamaica's history. For example, the Easter Rebellion of 1760 led by Tacky, and the Christmas Rebellion in 1831, which began on the Kensington estate in St. James, led by Sam Sharp, is since become a national hero. Maroons also had several wars against the English. In 1739, 1740, after two major Maroon wars, treaty was signed with the British, and in the Treaty of 1740 they were given land and rights as freemen. In return, they were to stop fighting and help capture the runaway slave. This treaty resulted in a rift amongst the Maroons, as they did not all agree that they should return runaway slaves to the plantation. The frequent rebellion in the Caribbean was one factor that led to the abolition of slavery. Other factors included the work of humanitarians who were concerned about the slaves' well-being. Humanitarian groups such as the Quakers publicly protested against slavery and the slave trade. They formed an anti-slavery committee which was joined by supporters such as Granville Sharp, James Ramsey, Thomas Clarkson, and later on William Wilberforce. On January 1, 1808, the Abolition Bill was passed. Trading in African slaves was declared to be utterly abolished, prohibited, and declared unlawful. Emancipation and apprenticeships came into effect in 1834, and full freedom was granted in 1838. So I'll end it there for part 2 on the history of Jamaica. And as I said, once again, if you like what you hear, like to hear more, please hit the subscribe button and possibly like and share. Until then, I'll see you anon.